First, let me introduce myself. My name is Vivek Charan. I'm chairman of the Confederation of Regional Business Chambers, but I'm also small and medium business owner myself, family business as well too. This is not the first of the seminars that have been put on by the University of the West Indies. And they feature, this tonight actually, we feature some pretty eminent speakers. So first I'd like to introduce the panel. First is Mr. Roger Anthony Roach. Roger Roach is the founder and chief executive officer of Lazuri Apparel Limited. Mr. Roach is passionate about the holistic development of the manufacturing sector in Trinidad and Tobago. He was re-elected to the TTMA Board of Directors in April 2023 and currently holds the office of the president. Lots of good things have happened while he's been in office as well too at the TTM. He's the chairman of Export Centers Company Limited, that's ECCL, and serves as a director on the boards of Evolving Technologies and Enterprise Development Company Limited, ETEC, the National Insurance Board of Trinidad and Tobago, and Trinidad and Tobago NGL Limited. Mr. Roach is the former chief executive of Langston Roach Industries Limited and the managing director of ANSA Coatings Limited. He owns a BSc in Economics and Management and a postgraduate diploma in Corporate and Commercial Law from the University of West, as well as an International Masters of Business Administration from UWI Arthur Lockjack School of Business, which is specialized in international marketing. Good evening and welcome, Mr. Roach. I'd also like to introduce on our esteemed panel, Ms. Vashti Gardine, Chief Executive Officer, Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Services Industry. Vashti's career spans over 2 decades, encompassing research, development, policy design, SME development, global and institutional competitiveness, and international relations. Prior to her current position at TTCSI, she held esteemed roles in academia, the public and private sectors, working with organizations such as Arthur Lockjack Global School of Business, the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry, Commerce, the Economic Development Board of Trinidad and Tobago, International Finance Center, and Ministries of Energy and Public Administration. Her significant contributions include serving as lead researcher for Trinidad and Tobago's inaugural participation of World Economic Forum, Global Competitiveness Report in 2006. She was also the visionary behind the country's first competitive statistical digest on the energy sector in 2010, demonstrating a forward-thinking approach. Vashti has successfully led numerous projects in collaboration and international development agencies, such as the American Development Bank, UNICLAC, and the World Bank. Her impressive track record showcases her ability to develop research products that empower the business community to make informed decisions. Welcome, Ms. Gadi. I'd also like to introduce Dr. Professor Roger Hussain, who is no stranger to these forum seminars. He has been, a staple in terms of his contributions here, as well as his contributions nationally on the media and so on. Welcome, Dr. Hussain. I think Dr. Hussain has pretty much become very well known. He's well known for his position in university. He's also very well known as he worked with many governments regionally to offer them advice on a consultative basis. And he also gives very freely of his time and his expertise and his knowledge in terms of speaking about issues that affect us in terms of our economy nationally. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Mr. Roach to begin the presentations tonight. Thank you.
Okay, good night, everyone. And special good night to my fellow panelists and those who have taken their time to view this presentation online. The topic we're about, let me get right into it, because the topic of Forex, if we were to really dive into it, in terms of some of the factors, could take all night. So in terms of my presentation, I'll start off by giving an overview of the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association. Founded in 1956, the TTMA was founded to take advantage of the new industrialization policies, or import substituting industrialization and resource-based industrialization, instituted by the government at that time through its implementing agency, the Industrial Development Corporation, IDC. Today, the TTMA has become an integral part of the Trinidad and Tobago's economy via the manufacturing sector and is dedicated to the development and promotion of local manufacturing-based industries in several sectors. Our membership currently stands at about 650 companies. In fact, we approved 25 new members yesterday, so it's about 675 now. And some associate members being non-manufacturers, but those who are integral in growing the manufacturing sector. Over 60% of our members will fall in the SME sector, so they are viewed as very important to our mandate in assisting the membership and supporting their needs. Some of these SMEs are exporters and others are not. They produce mainly for domestic consumption. However, we at the TTMA are making serious strides, and I'll talk more about that later on, to encourage these entities to take advantage of the vast export markets. In doing so, they will have the opportunity to grow their business, employ more persons, and most importantly, earning their own foreign exchange. The TTMA currently has been wavering between a contribution of 18 to 20% of the country's GDP. And our goal, we set a goal some years ago during our manufacturing strategy to double our non-energy exports by 2025 from a 2019 base year. Holistically, the TTMA promotes, encourages, and assists in the growth and development of manufacturing industries. And this takes a variety of forms. We are an advocacy organization, and we work with the government in monitoring of legislation and helping to shape legislation, right, that promotes businesses and to encourage the ease of doing business in Trinidad and Tobago. Specifically, with regards to prioritizing the needs of small and medium enterprises, outside of our strategic partnerships with organizations such as Exim Bank, where a special FX facility was created for SMEs based on the lobbying efforts of the TTMA, and Export TT, where opportunities for grants through the EBI, which is the Export Booster Initiative framework, is made available. The TTMA has placed a special attention to SMEs at our Trade and Investment Convention by a pavilion space dedicated to this subsector. Also, the TTMA has created an avenue to further expose those business opportunities to SMEs via a recently created avenue of the TTMA called our pop-up shops. And the reason for doing these pop-up shops is to see the readiness of some of these SMEs in terms of their product offering, their packaging, and to ensure that they get the right types of support by directing them to programs and policies, both governmental and in the private sector, that can aid in their company's growth and development. We will also talk about some of the internal factors prohibiting the growth of SMEs, right? And we will just talk from our own observation as an association. I think some companies are by nature risk adverse. In other words, we found an unwillingness to only go where they have not gone before. And we have taken almost an evangelical approach to helping businesses to understand that once you formulate your strategy as a business, selling to San Fernando, if you're operating in Port of Spain, cannot be the end of your strategy. Or getting your products to Tobago could not be the end of your strategy. We have to start encouraging, especially our members, and we talk for manufacturers, that when they're developing their products, when they're conceptualizing their business in terms of the structure of their business, export must be an integral part of the business's strategy. We have to understand that a lot of businesses in Trinidad are family-run, family-owned businesses. And there are some benefits to family-owned businesses, but inherently, there are some challenges. For example, let me go off on a limb. And let's talk about one of the things that we are seeing. If you look at Trinidad and its junior stock exchange versus Jamaica, you will notice that the buoyancy with which the Jamaican Stock Exchange has been able to develop and grow versus only 2 companies listed on our local junior stock exchange, even though there's a tremendous amount of tax benefits and other incentives with regards to joining the stock exchange. Some of that comes out of a fear of giving up too much of the company's ownership. When in truth and in fact, a company can benefit a lot from external expertise and non-debt financing, which can help them grow their businesses. And this is just one aspect where we see that it's not for want of incentives or want of encouragement. Is a matter of holding close to your ownership so you don't have external influence in your business. Companies fear also losing trade secrets. Found that even in the intervention of training programs, you find that companies are sometimes closed with exactly how they do certain things in their businesses. And I'm talking about small and medium-sized companies. They think that if you share certain things with the public with regards to the manufacturing secret in your product, somehow you would lose your competitive advantage. And we've been successful in convincing some of these companies that somebody can make the exact product as you and still not be as successful if you understand branding, marketing, distribution, and if you focus on a wider target market. In other words, a market outside of Trinidad and Tobago to grow your products. And instead of looking on the competitive plane, you start looking on the creative plane for new markets, and therefore you can run a very successful business without having a dominant market share in Trinidad and Tobago. The other thing is, some companies lack the capacity to develop business proposals and plans. And business proposals and plans, even though it changes rapidly in an entrepreneurial environment, it does help the company to source external financing. And the whole aspect of this is the way we do things can sometimes hamper our business from growing on the external playing field. You'll find that some companies lack what we call departments that aid in a structured approach to doing business. For example, they lack a certain amount of understanding because they don't have the inherent capabilities in the organization. For example, simple things like rules of origin documentation, bill of lading documentation, C82 forms, improper HR functioning policies. And you have a situation where the owner, in some cases, even though they may have certain skills and a certain gut way of doing business, operating as chief cook and bottle washer, is not the way to grow a business for sustainability and long-term growth. With this limited capacity, some companies we have been having to encourage in simple things, market research to understand price, promotion strategies of your competitors and opportunities, marketing, how to use social media, and how to invest in key areas that will actually result in growth and development. One of the key areas that we saw that was neglected in the past with regards to companies going on their own, as opposed to big companies, you'll find that large corporations are always eager to participate in trade shows. So in my experience, sitting where I sit, sometimes I want to talk to someone senior in an organization, and I would hear they're in Las Vegas in a trade show, or they're in Japan in a trade show, or they went to China in a trade show. That willingness to participate in external trade shows not only broadens your horizons, but also allows for the sourcing of new products, sometimes lower cost products, better quality products that can aid in the enhancement of the manufacturing of your products. The bigger opportunity with attending overseas trade shows is the networking opportunities. So you may go to buy something, meet somebody else and say, listen, what do you do? And when they hear what you do, all of a sudden that turns into an export opportunity. The other one and you will see a lot of focus on this by the TTMA, is trade missions. While some large corporations have export departments and persons who travel in these islands, some of them inheriting these markets from businesses in operation 20, 30, 40 years. They have an expertise in terms of going into a market, assessing the opportunities and capitalizing on these opportunities that small and some medium businesses don't have. So the TTMA has actually been taking a somewhat evangelical approach to taking businesses on key trade missions. I wouldn't go through all the different trade missions and the amount of companies and so on, but I can tell you that since 2022, we deliberately sought out SMEs, right, and paired them with large companies and said, let's all go together to markets. We've taken a number of small and medium-sized companies to what they consider to be new markets, when in fact these markets are long trading partners with Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm talking specifically about the English-speaking CARICOM market, which we call low-hanging fruit. 80% of the trade in CARICOM, and in some cases more, is actually skewed in Trinidad and Tobago's favor, meaning we export more products to CARICOM than we import from CARICOM. So we have been able, in between 2022 and 2024, right, to carry a number of companies all over the Caribbean. And in some cases, in key markets, we've taken them several different times. We have gone to Guyana on 2 occasions. This is in the last 3 years with trade missions. We have gone to Suriname on 3 occasions, 2022, 23, and 24. So key and so keen on the opportunity in that market that's going to develop, we've decided to go on a trade mission in that market every year. We went to St. Lucia, we've gone to Jamaica, we went to the Bahamas, to Belize, and so on, and several other markets. Getting to the point where this year in March, the TTMA, in collaboration with the Ministry of Trade and Industry, took 48 business persons to Ghana, West Africa. And in that contingent, you had 23 different businesses, because we thought that after doing the Caribbean in 2022 and 2023, we will begin in 2024 to not only look to SMEs, but also carry the larger manufacturers into bigger markets. And that was a very, it's turning out right now to be a very successful mission, ripe with opportunities, which I'm sure in the near future we'll be able to report on some of those opportunities. And the opportunities I'm talking about is not just to export products to West Africa. There are also some import substitution opportunities, products that are available there at much lower prices than we are buying them from in Europe and in North America and so on. And some companies have already benefited from sourcing raw materials from that market, and shipments are actually on the way to Trinidad and Tobago. And some companies have actually signed distribution agreements, and some service companies, interestingly, have signed and in the process of signing agreements with regards to technology, with regards to construction-related project management services. And there are some companies who are further afield looking at joint ventures and investment in that market, which is Ghana, that has 34 million persons and is the gateway to West Africa, which has over 300 plus million persons. The item I want to talk about is with regards to reinvestment, and this is still on items prohibited in SMEs. Sometimes we take too long to reinvest in the business, especially, and we take too long to recognize where the demand has changed. Sometimes the demand has changed, but because of a lack of reinvestment, some businesses aren't able to capitalize on the opportunities for growth. And once you don't have that opportunity for growth, in other words, you cannot supply the market, then it leaves out a vast opportunity for foreign products to enter into your space, or companies that are investing more to enter into your space. And that is why we're encouraging companies to take advantage of the grant funding available at the Ministry of Trade and Industry that provides up to $250,000 to purchase new machines and equipment, and to ensure that they run proper maintenance programs on their machines to ensure that their product quality is up. And these may sound like simple things, but the small and medium-sized businesses, we have seen that we have had to bring expertise in and make those interventions, right? Some companies we have found are very comfortable in their market space. In other words, there's a golden age in Trinidad and Tobago where you could have sold your products in Trinidad and Tobago, do very well, and I said do very well economically. People have already bought their dream homes, drive large luxury cars, live a very good life, travel the world, and to tell those persons to go out into the marketplace now to look for new business, we have found that there's a generation that is very comfortable. And one of the things that we've found is that some businesses have, and what I can say, issues with succession, and therefore there's no motivation to take the business further. There's, however, on the flip side, a new energy in businesses that have succession, where the younger breed has joined the family businesses, are more eager, more aggressive, more worldly. And we have found that we are taking a lot of these young entrepreneurs, young business persons on these trade missions. And they're going partly because of ambition, but the other aspect is need. It's no longer easy to just go to the commercial bank, ask for 20,000 US and get 20,000 US. Businesses now have to in the manufacturing sector, because we don't produce a lot of our raw materials, we import them, and businesses now have to, right, earn a certain percentage of their foreign exchange. And that, in fact, to survive and to strive on a long-term basis, businesses must earn at least 30% of their own foreign exchange to be efficient, right? I will intervene here and talk a little bit about the Exim Bank FOREX facility and what we have seen with that as a positive. We have seen a situation where over the last 3 years, $100 million, and this is information coming from the bank. Let me get it here. We've seen that with regards to the Forex sold to manufacturers, right? Manufacturers have repatriated $100 million more than they've taken from the Exim Bank in each year of the Forex facility. What does that say? It says that the money that we are taking from the Forex facility from Exim Bank is being properly used to purchase raw materials. When those raw materials are converted into finished products, and those finished products are sold on the external market at higher prices, the vast majority of the foreign exchange earned is making its way back into Trinidad and Tobago. Some external factors that inhibit the growth of SMEs, finances, talk about that. Some businesses are unable to put up collateral to secure loans from the commercial banks. Many SMEs don't have tangible collateral, and tangible collateral meaning in two instances, one is cash and the other one is property. The operations to grow don't understand about certain levels of mortgaging in terms of equipment and so on, and they do have sophisticated financial analysts and financial accountants to put proper proposals to the bank. And we have been providing some assistance in this area. the Forex availability, I can say that we have gone a long way in terms of solving that issue for our members. But on the wider society, there's not enough. The Forex demand has outstripped the Forex supply. In fact, last year I was on a panel with one of the major banks, and in 1 month last year, I think it was September, October, the demand for Forex was $300 million more than the available funds in the banking system. That figure hovers sometimes in the area of $150 million per month, right? With regards to demand and supply. And some demand has been dwindling because some people have just stopped asking for all that foreign exchange. Some companies have lost market share because they can't pay the suppliers on time, or the prices of products have gone up, and therefore we've seen some lowering of demand, but there's still a lot less foreign exchange in the market to supply the demand, and that has all to do with the lack of Forex being pumped into the system by energy companies due to low energy prices and low production. In terms of expansion and growth, I spoke about it. Some companies have reached their maximum capacity. And one thing that is affecting companies, because you can have capacity in terms of faster machines, more robust machines, and so on, to get economies of scale. But the other low-hanging fruit is simply putting on another shift. And we have seen situations where the crime situation have prevented businesses from even wanting to put in a night shift. Reason being is that while the business owner and the executive and management of the business may not live in crime-prone areas, their employees do. And some areas you cannot leave your house when it's dark. And if that has to happen, it means the business has to actually pay transportation, secure transportation, to pick up these employees and then drop them back home. And we have seen where some businesses not willing to take that step. In terms of the initiatives to assist SMEs, and this is my second to last point before I hand over to the next speakers, we've seen where, and I'll start with government programs, where the government have initiated a number of programs through the Export Booster Initiative, particularly in Export TT. And I mean, there are other programs in export centers, there are programs in NETCO. But in terms of directly bootstrapping some of these entrepreneurs, in terms of Export TT, right? The research and development facility grants, right? Businesses have taken advantage of about $7 million worth of these grants in the last 4 years. That has benefited 60 companies who receive support in many areas to grow their businesses in terms of machinery, developing e-commerce capabilities, developing intellectual property registrations, developing websites, registering their brands abroad, shipping samples, and so on, right? And that is $7 million across the facilities that have been spent, right? Now, this facility was capitalized initially with $50 million. So even though I say in one breath that the $7 million is good, the facility is still severely underutilized, and that is a challenge which we are trying to meet with regards to encouraging companies to take advantage of these facilities. The research and development facility, in particular, $900,000 was spent in key areas that benefited the food and beverage and ICT sectors. With regards to in-market promotions, $407,000 was spent, and that is to ship samples abroad to new distributors to get them aware. And this is samples in markets where trade missions have not taken place. In terms of the International Certification Fund, $2.4 million have been spent in that area. And this fund supports technical expertise changes to infrastructure, new machinery and equipment to meet standards, labeling and testing, 110,000, and the Export Accelerator Program, where it's training to entrepreneurs in terms of how to do exports and how to structure your business for exports. And in conclusion, there's a number of other areas that we have seen taking place in the economy that the TTMA support wholeheartedly. And I know Dr. Hussain is very familiar with this one and supports this one. And that is the building of additional industrial parks to facilitate non-energy manufacturing. The greater expansion of these parks will provide subsidized facilities, ease of entry in terms of properties, building fit-for-purpose factories that are built and specially purposed for exports. We've seen the implementation now of the special economic zone policy, and we understand that that company has just recently gotten a CEO, an experienced CEO that came from industry, will be working towards implementing the programs and to actioning the programs that was developed by the board over the last year and a half. Right? We've seen the expansion of MAP, MAP, and MIC, allowing for SMEs to access, enhance, and improve labor through their many training programs. We have seen a collaborative approach between business and the Ministry of Education to put more fit-for-purpose programs into the tertiary level institutions, focusing more on trade, focusing more on Industry 4.0 and robotics and so on. We've seen the implementation of some of that. And we're actually working with the Ministry of Education and MIC to set up a learning factory at the facility so that the new technology that is available out there, when foreign companies invest or when local companies move to that new technology, local persons can benefit from those jobs and we don't have to import those jobs into the country. We have seen the increase in incubation centers from Kariri in collaboration with the IDB. And we have seen a number of other initiatives. We're looking forward to the full implementation of the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority, and we're looking forward to the implementation of the Beverage Container Bill. And in conclusion, there are a lot of things happening, and the TTMA is involved in a lot of, what can I say? I don't want to use the word backdoor, but a lot of negotiations and a lot of collaborations behind the scenes to ensure that we have a better environment and to improve the ease of doing business in Trinidad and Tobago, which we think it's difficult to do business in Trinidad and Tobago, and manufacturers and businesses should be commended for their resilience, because in spite of the challenges, and we have seen growth in terms of the approach to digitalization of certain aspects of the public service and so on, but despite the inefficiencies at our ports, licensing office, and some of our institutions, business in the manufacturing sector continue to strive and to grow. What we're trying to do is accelerate this growth and expansion, and the TTMA is willing to collaborate and lead the way to ensure that manufacturing in Trinidad and Tobago produces a greater contribution to the country's GDP, to earn greater foreign exchange and to input more foreign exchange into the economy, to make ourselves self-sufficient and to diversify the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I will stick around for questions when the time comes.
Thank you very much for that, Roger. I do agree with you. I do agree that the time is right for SMEs to diversify into manufacturing. I feel that one of the issues that we have, which you raised, is that of land or spaces to set up your plant. And I think e-tech parks are the key, or the expansion of e-tech parks is the key, but not only just the expansion, but purposely saying that the space is for new entrants into manufacturing, or new small and medium entrants into manufacturing, would go a long way, because obviously new parks would, new parks would attract a lot of interest, I believe, from established manufacturers and people looking to expand, perhaps. And so sometimes it tends to squeeze out new entrants. But certainly, I do agree with you, that's the way forward. Now, moving on to, thank you again, Roger. Moving on to Ms. Vashti Gardine and her submission. Vashti?
Sure. Thanks, Vivek. I know I pressed for time, so I'll get right into it. So just to give you all some context in terms of who we are, who is the TTCSI? The TTCSI was established back in 2006. And why? It was because of a decision that was taken back in 2004 by the heads of government of CARICOM. And this was when the region was preparing to negotiate the EU Economic Partnership Agreement. So whilst there were robust manufacturing associations throughout the region, there was no single entity to speak and negotiate on behalf of the services sector. And this was when the region was preparing to negotiate. I'm hearing an echo. Can I go ahead?
Hi, Vashti. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sure. So over the period 2005 to roughly 2012, roughly 14 CSIs were established throughout the region, including the Dominican Republic. So we are part of a sister network of CSIs. Fast track to 2018, there were just 6 active CSIs. And from the onset, we were global. Our mission and vision was to grow a cadre of services exporters within the region. So let's look at the state of play. In 2018, that's when I came on at the TTCSI, and given at that point in time, the board of directors did a complete revamp of our mission and vision and strategic plan. And some of the challenges that we were facing, Roger spoke about doubling export, and the core challenge impacting the services sector is that we do not have rigorous data. We are not able to track some subsectors within the services sector. And we all know that once to get something done, you need to measure it. So herein lies where the TTCSI, at that point in time, conceptualized a number of projects for PSIP funding. One of those projects was something called the National Services Exporters Survey. And we were then going to take the data from this survey and build out a National Services Exporters portal. 2019 was meant to be the base year. So we conducted this survey in 2019. We built out the portal in roughly 2020, just before the pandemic hit. And the intention was to do this survey every year. So I'll just share some brief findings on the survey. So on your screen now, in 2019, we focused on 6 sectors. And why did we select those sectors? This was preliminary research that was conducted by the TTCSI in collaboration with the Commonwealth Secretariat. We had gotten funded back in 2010, 2011 to do these studies. So 6 sectors. Then back in 2022, given the research findings from the 2019 study, we realized that there were 4 subsectors within services that were not on our radar, but we had seen where there were export activity. So again, all of this information is housed within the portal. So what were some of the top 5 barriers to selling services? Now, because we did not just conduct a survey, we also held focus group with various service providers and entrepreneurs. And we realized one of the challenges that we were facing was that when you talk to a service provider about exporting their service, they never saw themselves as an exporter. simply because they felt to be an exporter, you needed to produce a product. So the whole concept of being an exporter within the services sector was new to them. And this is where we introduced a program called Services Go Global that was developed through funding from Caribbean Export and the EU. And we started to educate service providers about what it meant to be a service provider. But this was a one-off program, meaning that it was held over a period of 2 weeks. And we did this over 2018 to roughly 2020. We trained and certified roughly 350 service providers, and we produced a catalog, but nothing was happening. So again, we went back to the drawing board to determine what were some of the obstacles that these people were facing. And herein lies where we realized that to build a cadre of services exporters, we needed a long-term program. We needed to not just provide them with the tools to develop an export plan, but we need to actually provide them with coaches over a 9 to 12-month period. And herein lies where, in order to build a nation of Forex earners, we have to address, one of the gaps we have to address is doing some radical rethinking and restructuring, whereby it means, in essence, it means building the exporter's mindset. So over the period 2021 to 2023, we developed, in collaboration with a Canadian firm, Gateway to Trade. Gateway to Trade was an intensive export accelerator program. It was the first export accelerator program just for the services sector. And it was a graduated approach. So we had roughly 156 entries. So we took 80 firms for phase 1. You needed to produce a number of your export plan, then to move on to phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 was market connections. So from 80 firms, we ended up with 22 firms. So the idea behind this program, and this is, we also launched a Go Global TT Services National Campaign. And part of this whole Go Global TT Services National Campaign, it comprised roughly of 5 key projects, which was the National Services Exporters Survey, the National Services Exporters Portal, Gateway to Trade. Of course, we need to reward winners and motivate people, the Lawrence Placide Award. As well as marketing and showcasing these service providers by producing a number of catalogs and publications. So, in essence, what we have had is that we have been able to produce roughly 22 firms, and the idea behind, just like on the manufacturing side, you have the top 50, the top 100 manufacturers. The intention of the TTCSI that every year, by the year 2027, we would have grown a cadre of roughly 100 services exporters drawn from the subsectors I identified before. Now, I saw a question about, so again, services we do not have the resources that the energy or the manufacturing sector has. So we have had to be very creative in our approach. So I spoke about phase 4 of Gateway to Trade, which is supposed to be market connections. Market connections was supposed to be handled by Export TT. But the institutional support that we have for manufacturing and energy is not, we cannot utilize those sets of tools and programs for the services sector because to begin with, the services sector is diverse. There are some mature services, there are some infant services. So how you handle a trade mission for a manufacturer, it is not the same approach or methodology that you have to use for the services sector. So we went back to the drawing board and using the findings from these two surveys, 2019 and 2022, we asked the participants, identify your priority markets. And we came up with roughly 40 markets. And we met with all of the embassies and we said, here's what we are going to develop a doing business with the World Series to expose these people, again, using the technology, to the ins and outs of doing market in this particular jurisdiction. And that has been pretty successful. But again, we have to reinvent ourselves. So we went beyond just providing people with information, but providing them with market intelligence. And this, what you see on the screen, is your National Services Exporters Trade Portal. It's live on the TTCSI website. We have roughly 550 local firms registered on this portal. And these are firms that we would pull from time to time. So if we need to advocate on behalf of a certain subsector, we are able to do this quickly. And people always ask, how are you able to get such a high participation rate? Simply because we focus on what's in it for you. So the firms know that that information is what it is being used for. Whether we are successful or not, we share the learnings and the inroads that we have made. So moving forward with this portal, it is now evolving into an international services hub, whereby the firms that we are interacting for B2Bs on the regional and international side, they are now allowed to register on the portal. And this is how we are able to do B2B meetings with our local firms and the international firms. And we are able to use the technology because we have built in a template within this portal to track the obstacles, if they were successful, if any contracts were signed. So again, did you know that roughly 67% of the processes in producing a loaf of bread involves services? So we did not leave out the manufacturing sector because, again, it's all about building an international services hub. So we focus on the cuisine and culture of these 40 plus markets. And the idea here is to demonstrate import substitution using TNT products to produce the cuisine of a particular country. We have done that for roughly 3 markets thus far, to show the integration. And in that process, so the embassies, the ambassadors, most ambassadors have a personal chef. So it's to expose our locals to preparing that cuisine and use local products. And we did just recently, we did that for the Turkish market. So now let's look at some of the challenges and where we need to go forward, because if we need to build the foreign exchange capacity of the services sector, these are some of the challenges that we are facing. That exporter's mindset. What do I mean by that? Because most of our businesses are accustomed to business coming to them, they are not able to market and sell themselves. They do not know how to pitch their services. So this is what I mean by an exporter's mindset. They also, because you're a service provider, you do not have a product, you are basically selling yourself. You need to have a level of confidence in yourself. And this is where the export accelerator comes in. So this is what this is going forward, what TTCSI is focusing on in terms of the art of sales, selling, how to pitch. Secondly, we need to build out an ecosystem to support the services sector. And part of that ecosystem entails measurement and collecting trade data. Because Professor Hussein would ask me from time to time, what is the level of productivity within subsectors? And the reality is I cannot say because we do not have the data. So we have been pushing hard, developing certain projects for funding. But again, it's a stop and go method. So we have roughly 2 NSCS. But now we have been collaborating with the central bank that we need to do that survey twice a year, because the input from that survey is going to lead to the development of a services index, but we have not gotten any funding to do that. The third area is the institutional framework and institutions to support the services sector. Export TT is excellent at what they do, but for the manufacturing sector, we need to have a different approach if we are serious about driving services exports. And we saw that when we did a mission to Jamaica, whereby the approach and methodology used for trade mission for the manufacturing sector could not be utilized for the services sector. So what we have been able to do is that to utilize the technology. There are steps in terms of how to do a virtual trade mission. So it's more a hybrid approach in terms of how we develop strategies for the services sector. And that in a nutshell, because I wanted to give enough time for questions, is some of the key projects that we have developed at the TTCSI over the past 5 years.
Thank you very much, Vashti, for that very detailed presentation. In the interest of time, I'd like to ask Dr. Hussein to begin his presentation. Dr. Hussein?
Yeah, I'm trying to load my PowerPoint now. Hold on, right. Are you all seeing my PowerPoint, Vivek? Vivek, are you seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes, we are. Well, I am.
So quickly, 7:53, I would try to take about 7 minutes because I prefer the question go to Vashti and Roger. I would help where I can. Now,
Prof, can you put the presentation on presentation mode, please?
Okay, yes. Now, my concern is that this is where I see the Trinidad and Tobago economy in relation to other Caribbean countries. Our transfers and subsidies bill as a percent of GDP is about 3 times that for a large proportion of Caribbean countries, which makes no sense to me. And it does not come. Look at Grenada, Bahamas, Antigua and Barbuda. They have much higher GDP per capita than Trinidad and Tobago using current GDP per capita data. So it's not as if you spend a lot of money on transfers and subsidies and you get a higher per capita GDP. It doesn't translate immediately. So in other words, you could safely cut transfers and subsidies and still maintain a higher per capita GDP. And this is the progression in transfers and subsidies here, which to me needs some, as we would say in football language, some manhandling. This is the ratio of transfers and subsidies to capital injections. I was really glad to hear Roger Roach speak. I enjoyed his presentation. I learned a lot. And one of the things that he mentioned is that there are plans for the e-tech parks. And what I would say to policymakers is that we need to lower this transfers and subsidies to capital injections ratio. And some of the money we cream out, put it in widening supply space via these export-oriented e-tech parks. Now, you hear a lot of talk from a lot of commentators about the expected increase in gas. This came out within the last 2 weeks from the IMF using data given to the IMF by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And I mean, to me, this looks like just a marginal improvement in gas output. In other words, based on what the IMF has said, there is not going to be any significant bailout on the foreign exchange side of the economy from an enhanced gas production. So we need to continue dialogues like we are having now to increase non-energy export revenue. That is what this graph is saying to me. Yes, you will get a little, a little money, but it's not the kind of money that you had in 2010 and 12 and 14 and so on. So that brings me to this graph here, which to me is a way to avoid the long talk and the small talk about the Trinidad and Tobago economy. The graph is divided into two axes, a tradable goods axis and a non-tradable goods axis. The vertical axis is non-tradable. The horizontal is tradable. It shows several production functions. The first production function shows where the economy produces NT0 non-tradable goods and T0 tradable goods. That is about 1996. We get a natural gas boom that hypothetically pushes the production possibility point to B. And with government intervention in the economy, we moved to a point such as C, except that C was unstable. And because transfers and subsidies that I showed here and here and here and here, because of that elevated transfers and subsidies, the labor force participation rate fell, the economy moved to a point such as D. That's about 2014, 2015. But at the point D, you also had a decline in natural gas production and an increase in Venezuelan workers. So it changed the shape of the production possibility frontier so that productive activity now takes place at a point such as NT3 and T3. And the fundamental question that the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Planning has to answer, in my opinion, is how do we move the economy from E to F? And to move the economy from E to F, first to begin, we have to see the ramifications. Every time the IMF come here and I pay great detailed attention to these reports, they have downgraded the growth performance of the Trinidad and Tobago economy. It's very frustrating in that you see, if you compare 2024 and you compare 2022 report, for example, you see it's almost about 5.16 percentage points lower. That's an enormous amount to me. 6 percentage point in real GDP growth. These reports have shown between 2 years a lower level of GDP. And so the rest of the PowerPoint, which I will just go through in 1 minute, simply shows how we could use tourism, how we could use import substituting industrialization, how we could use exact science, as I've reached out to Roger Roach, TTMA, to try to get them interested in, to calculate. I heard Roger Roach speak about going to Ghana, but I asked the question, why do we go to Ghana? Why not Nigeria? Why not Bolivia? Or why don't we first exhaust the English, the CARICOM market that remains, the French Caribbean, the Dutch Caribbean, and the other Caribbean? Is Trinidad and Tobago so big an exporter that we have exhausted the Caribbean where all these low-hanging fruits lies? I would have to be convinced about that because I don't think that is the case. We need to increase production of rising stars and so on. I would take those in the question and answer session. But basically, and we increase the inflow of remittances from the diaspora abroad. So the question I throw out to policymakers like Vashti and Roger and Vivek is, how do we move from E to F? Where's the hardcore scientific work that gets us from E to F using, say, 6-digit or 8-digit data, and that you put out in the public domain areas with the highest probability of success? I note Roger Roach mentioned the report, the TTMA strategy, which was undertaken in part by people at the university, and I think it was eventually handed over to Ernst & Young, or was it Price Waterhouse, one out of the two. But the base scientific work was done from people at the university. And I therefore urge Vashti, I've been trying to urge her for a little while, and Roger wrote, let us do the hardcore scientific work. Yes, these stakeholder consultations are useful. Yes, focus groups are useful, but they don't use the hard scientific data, in my humble view, and therefore increases the probability of a miss it. So I would stop there. I throw that out, you know, for comments and dialogue with my other panelists. I always harass Vashti and say these things to her, to hear her opinion. So thank you all very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Roger. At this point in time, we would open we'd open for questions. Are there any questions that anybody would like to ask?
If there are any questions, you can
let
put
me
your
start
hand
off with a
up.
question, if that is okay, Chair. I would
Yes,
like to
sure,
ask
Roger.
Roger, I put it in the chat, maybe you didn't see it. Why Ghana? Why not exhaust the French Caribbean, the Dutch Caribbean, the English-speaking Caribbean, what I would call the other Caribbean, sorry. And then why not look deeper at Suriname and Guyana that are going to explode? I have looked at the manufacturing data, probably more than anybody else in the world. And I cannot understand. I mean, I know there are dimensions to these things, but why Ghana and why not exhaust the low-hanging fruits first? I mean, if I go buy a mango tree, the first thing I do is I point up my hand and pick and what I can reach. I have several mango trees. By looking for the biggest, lowest Julie mango. Why climb to the top of the tree or somewhere in the middle and risk falling down when I could get ample fruits, in my opinion, from low down enough? So that's my first question to Roger.
Okay, so I don't know if you missed that part of the presentation, Roger, but I said that Suriname, we have been to Suriname in 2022, 2023, and a trade mission just came back from Suriname. And I did say in regards to Suriname, we have put on our agenda to go to Suriname every year because we have identified the tremendous opportunity in the Surinamese market. And we have even told companies, even though you're going there now, and right now, if you go into the market now, you would see that the economic conditions, it is not showing any signs of buoyancy. But we have to build the relationships now, get to know the markets now, understand who the main players are, and even explore opportunities to register businesses there in times when you can get your feet wet. Because when the market starts to move, you end up in a situation where there's a lot of foreign investment coming into the market and it could crowd out the Caribbean food. So we are looking at Suriname strategically, and we have been. We have a number of members who have literally set up shop in Guyana, to the point where they've put significant assets on barges and just shipped them to Guyana and are capitalizing on the growth in that market. So we are looking at that. In terms of the French Caribbean, however, there are some I don't want to call it challenges, but you have to augment products to sell into those markets a lot more than you can sell into English-speaking markets. So let me put it, so to get your product into Martinique or Guadeloupe, it's just as challenging as to get it into a country like Ghana. Now, Ghana, you're exporting a ready-made product that is in English into that market without having to change your label, register in Europe into European standards and all of that. So and why we went to Ghana is very simple. A relationship was developed in Ghana, and we saw literally a door that was cracked open, and we went to see how we could open it further in a market that's friendly to us. And I can tell you that the relationship that we have, the doors that were open, and the way in which they view Trinidad and Tobago is a lot higher than I would say even we view ourselves. Trinidad and Tobago has developed a capability in manufacturing that even some larger economies do not have, right? So let me give you an example. For Ghana, they will export pineapples to Europe. One of the major players is Dole. and re-import it into Ghana at 13 times the price. And we have massive canning operations in Trinidad, massive canning operations exporting to the world. So we took advantage of an opportunity in Ghana. It's not that we took advantage of that opportunity and neglected the other opportunities that are available in the Caribbean. That's why we went to Belize, that's why we went to the Bahamas, and that's why because small and medium-sized companies, taking them into a large market, sophisticated like that, you're right. They're not ready for it as yet. It's better they exploit the opportunities in the Caribbean, right? Because there are opportunities still in the Caribbean, large pockets of opportunities. And the Guyana market is the fastest growing economy in the world. And we're next door to Guyana. So we're not going to ignore a country like Ghana. In fact, we tell our members after the trade mission, go back and firm up your deals. And it's 50 minutes away. It's less than an hour away. Keep going until they plant your feet solidly in our market like that, and then send the foreign exchange back to Trinidad. I hope it answers the question.
I'd actually like to ask Vashti a question. Vashti, when you look at how many doctors, how many medical professionals we have graduating every year. So we have medical professionals graduating from, well, let's say doctors graduating from Mount Hope. We have dentists graduating from Mount Hope. We have vets graduating from Mount Hope. Is there a way that we could have a policy whereby, in terms of services, that we have our medical graduates work abroad and earn FOREX for themselves, and then perhaps come back to Trinidad and Tobago, probably on some sort of internship or something? Because when we look at the reverse, when we look at how many nurses there are in, for example, UK hospitals that come from the Caribbean, if we look at Trinidad and we look at how many nurses there are that are from India and more recently from places like Cuba and so on, I think the government had an arrangement with. Could we possibly have the reverse in terms of us exporting our medical professionals abroad? And how you see the TTCSI as being able to assist in that?
Vivek, back in, I spoke about the studies that were commissioned by the Commonwealth Secretariat back in 2010, 2011. So work has been done in terms of a number of strategic plans were developed for a number of subsectors, but we don't have buy-in to do, because a lot of development work has to go in to the for the services sector, and that we have no resources. TTCSI do not have the resources to actually implement those things.
So where would you think the impetus from that should come from in terms of our government? Should it come from the Ministry of Trade, or should it come from the Health Ministry, or does it take a multi-ministry approach to get something like that?
So how it was designed, again, going back to those studies that were commissioned, was that the TTCSI was going to be the institution that would have been given the resources to guide and implement.
Okay.
And that didn't happen because the ministry cannot implement the things that needs to be done. So part of that involved, for instance, with education services, was that we guide and help with the development of the Export of Education Association, where we bring all the TLIs together. Okay. And we advocate for a number of strategies and policies and incentives. Okay, so it was roughly 6 sectorial plans that were developed, including the yachting sector.
All right, I see.
All right. So the fact about it, it is development work. It cannot be, wins cannot happen overnight.
So on another point, when it comes to vocational education, so here in Trinidad, we have young men learning and possibly women learning welding, learning car mechanics, stuff like that, right? Mechanics, tiling, masonry, that sort of thing. Where's the possibility of us using young men and women who have vocational training to go abroad and possibly earn an income in US dollars as part of a service arrangement, with us? For example, the way that our government would contract perhaps a Chinese contractor, and part of the arrangement with a Chinese contracting firm would be that Chinese nationals come and work in Trinidad on, let's say, for example, the highway and so on, or certain buildings and so on, and get paid, and then return to their own country. Could it be that we could also do the same thing with some of our vocational services?
Exactly. But here's what, it needs to be a coordinated approach. So we know that X number of persons are graduating from X institutions. What are the markets for these people? And we drive these people to those markets, but we also prepare them about what it takes to export your service. So this is why the missing ingredient and what we really need to address is the exporter's mindset. And a perfect example is the animation sector.
Oh, yes, yes.
Animators from the onset, it is a global industry. So we had one cohort of animators graduating from the Services Go Global program. And after they did that program, they felt that all of their colleagues should do that program because it prepared them, it showed them how to develop an export plan, how to deal with they learned about trade agreements, they learned about the EPA, they know what countries ratify the agreement, they learn how to conduct a pitch. So it's more work like that. Development work has to go into building a cadre of services exporters. But again, it cannot happen in silos, and we need a coordinated approach. It cannot be ad hoc.
Thank you very much.
Can I say something, Vivek?
Of course, Roger, of course.
Yeah. Vashti, I know you put a lot of work into the services sector, and we really, as a country, appreciate, probably because I know you, I have an idea of the amount of work you put in. What I would like to ask you is, so I saw you mention the Commonwealth study, but you didn't say how they got those sectors. You said you basically inherited those studies from what was done before. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I looked at the comparative advantage data from UNTAD at the 2-digit level for Trinidad and Tobago. And what I would say to you is, why not push tourism itself? Why, if it is in all these other Caribbean data, if you look at international tourism receipts as a percent of GDP, ours is very low. If you look at personal travel and transport, we have a comparative advantage in transport, of course. But why not develop the tourism product, which is a low-hanging fruit, intensely over the next 5 years, and let the other services sectors, some of what you are identifying, piggyback on this deep dive approach to tourism in the form of what I would call a backward and forward linkages? Why not push the tourism sector even more?
We have actually, Roger, tourism was one of the first sectors that we focused on. We went so far as developing a cluster development plan for MICE tourism. We went after funding from an international donor. And whilst they said that our plan was excellent, they didn't feel that the country was serious about tourism.
Okay, but is it possible? And Vivek, if you have any other questions, you could just tell me and I would stop. Don't you, so the way I view these things is, given that the country is in a crisis, in my opinion, in terms of foreign exchange, given the relation between the stock of external reserves and the level of external debt, or given that we are heading in the direction of a crisis, given that we have a situation, given as Roger mentioned, the decline in the production of natural gas, shouldn't we lobby more and continuously the Ministry of Trade and the relevant decision makers using sound economic arguments until we get some more traction? I mean, that would be the approach I would use. And I'll use an example. In terms of the Trade and Economic Development Unit, I know Roger is here, I'm harassing him a little. I intend to write Roger every month until we look at 6-digit data to get using the trade can methodology and reveal comparative advantage methodology, the rising stars, the missed opportunities. So we put out to the manufacturers, as we did in 2019 for TTME, the block of scientific information they need to enhance foreign exchange flows in a tremendous way. Isn't that the type of deep dive, and I'm just asking, that you all should be pushing at the Ministry of Trade? Ashley?
And this question,
No, remember, I'm TTCSI, right, Roger? So
I know.
we
I
are.
know.
Ashley is
no.
looking at you but asking it to me.
No, but let me just jump in here. Here's what we are proactive. Ramesh and I worked together we put forward a project looking at the linkages between tourism and manufacturing, because while they have a mandate to double exports, if we were to grow tourism sector, they may triple they may have the capacity to triple their exports. We don't know. So TTCSI developed the project screening brief for a PSIP funded project. We put it in last year jointly, and it was not approved. So again, we put it back this year because we need that type of work to go in, because it's a full value chain for tourism. We have seen there are live examples. Look at the Jamaican market. 1 million new rooms, hotel rooms. When we went on the trade mission to Jamaica, they told us, here's what, we need engineers, accountants. And they identify all of the areas that they identified was for services providers. And that happens when you have a growing tourism sector.
Vivek, we have a question. Mr. Floyd Chady has raised his hand. You can, we can ask him to unmute his mic. Yes, Mr. Chady, go ahead and unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hi, this is Floyd Chady. Mr. Roach, I don't mean to ignore you, but I'm listening to this focus on the TTCSI here, and Vashti, you're getting all the questions. It sounds to me that like you've done a lot of work here. And it seems to be a story of missed opportunities. And I like the question that Professor Hussain and Vivek raised to you here, because it shows at sort of looking at specific projects, there could be opportunities. I like to step back and think of sort of in the domain that you're looking at here, which is the opportunity for services. And if you take the very high level point of view, I don't have a feel for, what measures do you use to say, this is the size of what we're doing today in services? And say, if I were to aspire in 10 years to hit a different number, what would that number be in 10 years? Do you have a sense of that? How to size where you are today and how to size the opportunity in 10 years? How do you do that?
In a nutshell, no. So hence the reason why every time I speak, I talk about trade and services data until people tell me you sound like a broken record. Because I have been a researcher most of my career, and I don't like to guesstimate. We need to drill deeper and we need to do those studies. And we are getting some traction at the CARICOM level. So it will happen in Trinidad, but we need, in order to grow the services sector, it has to happen immediately. We need to have the the funding available, because we have a number. As I said, we developed the methodology for the National Services Exporters Survey. We just need to be consistent about it. So it's drilling deeper, just like what we are trying to do, just like how I identified those 22 companies through the Gateway to Trade program. The idea here is that we continue to work with those 22 companies so that we have an idea of what are their projections for the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, so you don't really have a sense because you haven't had the funds to do the research.
Correct.
Do you know if in any one of these sectors, in any one of these subsectors of the services industry, we have a sense, has any study been done externally or internally in TT to say this is the opportunity, a sort of a semi-business case put together for, because I think the reason I'm asking for this is because I think this is the kind of thing that excites people, where you might get traction. Because if you can say in any overall, or you can say in any particular subsector, here's where we are today, and here's where I think we can be in 10 years. And here's why that is true, giving them 4 or 5 points. That draws in people, and that could potentially draw in funds and drawing the kind of attention you need to get going. But that hasn't been done in any subsector or anything.
Animation is one of those sectors that work has been done, but it needs to be, the last study that was done for the animation sector was roughly 2018. So that's just before the pandemic. The yacht services, again, these studies were done back in 2018. I wish Jesse James was here because we have an idea in terms of what has to be done in terms of from a policy point of view to revive the yacht services sector. So those are roughly 2 subsectors, as well as fashion. Fashion TT has been doing a number of studies.
Okay.
So those are 3 subsectors that we could get data.
Vashti, if I may, Floyd, if I may interject.
No, this is good. Yeah, you go right ahead.
You mentioned the yachting. Well, they renamed themselves the Maritime Association.
Yes.
But we met with them, the Confederation, because they're part of the Confederation, and it was very interesting because when we were invited to the renaming ceremony, I spoke myself with many of the yachties that were invited there. People who have come to Trinidad on numerous occasions, right? Most of them are retired and they come on their sailing yachts and so on. And what they were saying to me is that in the process of sailing, there's so much repairs that need to be done, and Trinidad is the best place for certain types of those things to happen. Yet one of the major issues that they face in coming to Trinidad is going through immigration in Trinidad, which is far, far behind the immigration process in many of the other smaller islands, for example, even our neighbor Grenada. So again, when you're looking at the development of a particular sector of services, you tend to find, like what they had pointed out was, there's a lot of cross-ministry issues that need to be ironed out. So there's no one person to go to. So you have Ministry of National Security, under which immigration falls under, right? Customs and immigration falls under. Then you have Ministry of Trade, which other things would fall under. And so that makes the bureaucracy difficult to actually achieve what needs to be done in order to create more efficiency in people being able to come to Trinidad and also, utilizing the services there.
So Vivek, and this is one area that really has been the focus of Minister Paula Gopi-Skun, because she pulled together with my former president, who has been seriously championing this sector. So the issue there is that the rest of the world has moved to a single harmonized form. We have roughly more than 13 forms. The rest of the world has moved to an electronic sale clear form. We have not. So Minister Paula Gopi-Skun was able to bring together all of those stakeholders, the different ministries, to identify the bottlenecks and why things are not happening. So work is ongoing to ratify, to address those issues with the to ensure that we get a single harmonized form. But again, it's
We're not
taking
there
too
yet.
long. We're
Correct.
not there.
Right. And at stake is not just the idea of a harmonized form, but at stake is the growth of an industry and all the people associated with that industry.
So
And,
much so that Grenada is within the hurricane belt and more
correct.
yachties are going to Grenada.
Because it's easier for them to
Yes.
go there, right? Correct.
The Grenada Coalition will tell me that how the Yacht Services Association in Grenada is a strong lobby. Whatever they ask for, their government give it to them because they are bringing in revenue for the country.
So thanks, Varsha. At this point, I want to bring Roger back in, Roger Roach, because we kind of left Roger out for a bit there. But Roger and I have been having a conversation offline in the chat where Roger, I was talking about e-tech parks, and Roger was saying that he sees the value in expanding the e-tech parks. And my submission with regard to that is the best way to facilitate SMEs diversifying, or let's say people in retail, businesses in retail diversifying into some element of manufacturing. Now, he was quite right in his submission because he says that there are certain government grants available. One of those, for example, is a $250,000 TT grant that goes towards the purchase of machinery. Now, that works out to about $36,800 US dollars. The fact of the matter is that $36,800 US dollars, which might, and this grant allows for a maximum of 50% of the, well, up to that value, up to $36,800 US dollars purchase towards, let's say, machinery for manufacturing. There isn't a lot of but there's still machinery that one can purchase for, but it still goes a long way. But the larger issue is when we look at the price of land in Trinidad and Tobago, when you look at commercial rental space, like for example, in the Sanwa area I can talk to because there's a sort of industrial area there where there is space, and people have been building warehousing spaces for rent and so on, which one could possibly use to set up a manufacturing plant, small manufacturing plant in a sort of central area. You're looking at for 4,000 to 5,000 square feet, you're paying more close to $40,000 a month. Now, for a small manufacturer to get into it, to get into manufacturing, produce a product that he or she can sell to the masses at a price point that is accessible to the majority of people and possibly to be able to export competitively, then the high cost of let's say rent or setting up your business when you can't own the land yourself is difficult. And that's why I feel e-tech parks are very important for dealing with that particular barrier to entry into manufacturing for people who have been in other sectors such as retail. Now, this forum is really about FOREX. So I want to address as politely as possible the elephant in the room, which is the current issue of FOREX. Now, Roger and I have been talking offline, chatting, and Roger has been saying that FOREX has been adequate and so on for the manufacturing sector. And I could agree with that because the Exim Bank was set up specifically for, let's say, the manufacturing sector and to aid manufacturers and importing raw materials and so on. But the question I'd like to pose to Roger is, Roger, if we are really looking towards, the government is saying so, the economists are saying so, and you're welcome to the idea of more entrants or people diversifying into manufacturing. Do you think, given the current reserves, given our current situation with regard to the supply of FOREX, that the manufacturing sector can actually, could grow enough or could continue to grow, but yet still have enough FOREX to supply the needs of new entrants into the manufacturing sector, considering that new entrants into the manufacturing sector are going to need FOREX to purchase machinery and also FOREX to purchase raw materials and so on. So let's look at the short-term period, for example, with 2024 to perhaps, 3-4 years. As if we provide just, let's say, the environment for people to move into manufacturing. Let's say by the expansion of e-tech parks for one. Is there enough FOREX to support a larger manufacturing sector?
Wow, that's a lot of questions. So let me start off by saying that any retailer or business that is not involved in manufacturing that want to make that transition into manufacturing, advice number one, join the TTME. Because right now, I can tell you, one of my warehouses that I rent, I am paying $36,000 for 12,000 square feet. And what you're talking about is $10 a square foot. And there's no manufacturer I know that is paying more than $5 a square foot. Because when you set up, it's a matter of how you negotiate the space in a warehousing facility. For somebody who's coming into your facility to trade, the entry and exit from that facility is totally different to a manufacturer coming into that facility. One, a manufacturer coming into a facility to produce certain types of goods, you may need something like 3-phase electricity.
Correct.
When you put in 3-phase electricity, it means that you're not coming into that facility to sign a 1-year lease or a 2-year lease or even a 5-year lease, right? Now, just juxtapose that to e-tech parks where they're offering you up to, I think, 30 years in a lease. The reason why 30 years is a sweet spot for an industrial lease is because you can use the property to raise financing. A 30-year lease can be taken to the bank, valued, and you can actually get financing based on your entrance into an e-tech park. And that is why e-tech parks are so attractive and people rush to e-tech parks when it's available. Now, the marketing of e-tech parks, right, I can say firsthand, needs to be improved somewhat. Marketing, and I think InvestCT is the executive arm of that, and both players in InvestCT, I know them very well. In fact, the chairman is a former president of the TTM, right? The Phoenix Park Industrial Estate is not fully occupied. But if you were to look at the data, it might say, boy, this park's so big and it's full and it's 100% occupied.
Well, Roger, if I may interject, I totally agree with you about the importance of InvestCT. I've also been chatting with them. And they had indicated to me last year, December, that Phoenix Park was actually occupied. There were some people who are already in negotiations to purchase or to take up spaces in the park, right? To lease, but there was no space. So I was actually asking on behalf of people that had contacted our chamber, and I pointed them to InvestCT, and I was asking for myself as well too. And they were the ones who were telling me, well, among other things, one is that they're a very important body, and I feel that they have been sort of diminished, or maybe the resources that they had before is smaller than it used to be. And so they're kind of stretched thin, as it were. But I feel that they have a very important role, as does Export TT, to play. The
just
second
to
thing
answer
is
that question with e-tech parks, right? Remember, the Phoenix Park in particular, there's a particular mandate for Phoenix Park. So if the type of business falls outside of that mandate, you wouldn't get the space in Phoenix Park. For example, unless you're doing light manufacturing or a service that supports manufacturing, like a logistics company or a shipping company or something that when you look at the ecosystem of manufacturing, it supports it, then that application would not be entertained for Phoenix Park in particular.
And it's great that you raised that, because one of the issues I found when I was investigating the e-tech parks and the importance of them was that people have purchased leases and so on, but in many cases the leases are, how should I put it, dormant, because there have been no structures, or it hasn't been developed by the people who title to the land, and so it takes up valuable space, I feel, that could have been utilized by other people. Secondly, there's also the issue of in one or two parks, there have been people, obviously I can't call the names, that have set up manufacturing there, and the plants are now dormant, or they're shut because for some reason or the other it did not succeed, or it's not in operation, as it were. And so now they're sitting there and selling at a price tag of maybe about 10 million or 20 million or something like that. And so now you have a situation where if new e-tech parks were to be developed, I believe that we should go the way that you are suggesting, which is the terms of usage be changed somewhat to ensure that the people who take up spaces there actually utilize the spaces within a certain amount of time or certain amount of years. And two, that we use the e-tech parks, as I'm sure you would agree, as a sort of creche to develop small manufacturing, or perhaps it could be a tier basis, as we were discussing offline, where the lease could be cheaper for new manufacturers for a certain period of time, and manufacturers who are already established and want to continue expansion within e-tech parks could pay a different price lease, considering the fact that they're already within the manufacturing now. They're already manufacturing, and they're a growing concern as a business.
Roger Hossain have been talking to you because he speaks a lot about e-tech parks. Now, in terms of e-tech parks, if you look at any e-tech park, you realize the rental rate is below the market rate. Hence the reason why
exactly.
it is so attractive. The rental rate is actually below the market rate, and that's because e-tech is starting off from a position of land ownership.
Correct, because
e-tech is not acquiring the land from the government. e-tech has been allocated the land. Because e-tech has been allocated the land, right? That is one of the reasons why the rental agreements are low. And let me tell you, and one of the things you brought up is active participation in your lease. So in the new leases that have gone out, we are giving tenants a certain time period to build, and that's based on the sophistication of what you're building. So if you're building a simple operation, you get up to 2 years rent-free to build the operation, and then you must be in active use within a certain time. So if it's very complicated, you might get 3 years, and then you get a certain amount of time if you have to get a license to operate, or you need some kind of approvals from regulatory agencies, might give you a year or two to get those. But within the first period of your lease, we expect the lease to be in active ownership, because we have identified, as you have said, persons who have legacy leases. And legacy leases, I mean, there are people in e-tech park with 99-year leases, in the Martin Industrial Estate, in Umera Industrial Estate, and so on. We call those legacy parks. And they have these 99-year leases, acquired those leases many years ago, and now the property value, because the park is fully built, they want to capitalize on the investment. In between that, there are some deals to be had where the economic situation for people are different. So somebody may have deep pockets and they could wait 10 years for the property to sell. But there are people who need to sell the property now, and some persons are picking up on those deals. But the point you're making in terms of diversifying, which is the big point, into some of the traditional businesses, into manufacturing, is something that the TTMA fully supports. The other thing with regards to Forex, because manufacturing has been prioritized by the government, there are many ways to get Forex. For example, for machinery, Exim Bank has a facility called the X loan. X loan means you borrow the money in US dollars to pay for your machine, and you pay back that loan in TT dollars. That is called the X loan. And then there are other facilities, for example, like the Forex, this is not the Forex facility to buy Forex. This is the foreign exchange loan facility, where you can get a facility to buy raw materials and pay back that facility in 6 months, which means it gives you enough time to acquire the raw material, convert it, sell it, collect your money before you have to pay it back, right? And then there's trade financing, meaning you might sell to an export market. The importer in that market wants credit. Exim Bank will discount the bill for you, give you a US dollars immediately, and then you pay back in 180 days. So there are many facilities available for for persons involved in manufacturing. And while we're happy about that, I want to talk to Vashti's point where a full economy is important for everyone. And when other parts of the economy is dormant, it impacts the demand for manufacturers. So it's not like because we have all these incentives and all these programs, we're not cognizant as to what is going on in the other economy. We also want the gas deals and so on to come through to pump more forex into the economy. And we want the tourism to be developed, and we want more airlift to go into Tobago and Tobago get more hotel rooms and so on.
Correct.
Because when the economy is buoyant, right, you get more economic activity and you get more entrepreneurs coming into the economy, which helps a situation where the government can no longer do those make work programs and all these transfers and subsidies. If you get more people into earning their own income, then that is the only way, one of the sure ways to reduce the transfers and subsidies that is so large in the society.
But Roger, what's important too is where you sit, the position you sit at, and you've been sitting there for many years now, and you seem to have a very broad overview over many things in the manufacturing sector. Outside of the manufacturing sector, for people in retail, so we just spoke about an economy and different sectors of an economy. And we want an inclusive economy. We don't want an exclusive economy. We want everybody within the economy to do well. So outside of manufacturing, let's say, we know that the retail sector, particularly small and medium business in the retail sector, is feeling the effects of the shortage of forex, right? For many reasons. So my question to you is, from where your perspective is, which is an important perspective, being the head of the TTM and being a manufacturer or being involved in manufacturing yourself, do you see where we are now as worrying or critical in terms of the supply of forex, which is in some regards, right, an external thing in a sense, right? It has to do, as you rightly said, about the supply of gas and other things. But the fact is, if we're looking for more people to get into manufacturing, there is no guarantee that in getting into manufacturing, you'll immediately end up exporting the product that you're manufacturing. Obviously, if you're getting into manufacturing, the first market that you're looking at possibly would be your home market and selling in your home market, which is the easier sell, rather than the foreign market. The third thing is that the food and beverage sector in the manufacturing sector is the most successful sector, according to stats coming out from Export TT. So when we look at, so again, we come down to the question of forex, and your perspective is an important perspective. Do you think we are at so we've had discussions before where we were wondering, are we in a crisis, or is it just a critical point, or is there no problem? So from your perspective in manufacturing, where are we at? Is it a crisis? Is it a critical situation, or is there not a problem at the moment?
Okay, so to answer that, I don't think there's a crisis, but I think it's critical, and the reason why, and I think it's critical for the mere sense that if there was this forex window were to be taken away, would we be as successful as we are today? For example, government programs are not guaranteed. It's not like we see the forex window in Exim Bank and we say that's going to be here for the next 10 years and they're going to keep recapitalizing it.
Well, that's very honest, Roger. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Really appreciate
what we're hoping to do is that within the period that it is available, is to maximize it and to build our own foreign exchange earnings, right? So that is basically the program we're on, why we're focusing on trade missions and exporting and building capacity and all of that. Because we're saying one day, if it's not available, what do we do then? Companies have to earn their own foreign exchange.
Outside the manufacturing sector, there's a perception, and maybe a very wrong perception, but scarcity brings out, a certain amount of conflict and sometimes the wrong perception. So outside the manufacturing sector, there's a perception that people in the manufacturing sector who are exporting and doing well are earning forex and banking their forex and not utilizing the forex they own for their own business usage. So how does it actually work with regard to, let's say, the Exim Bank and other things, in terms of people who are earning, if you're a manufacturer and you earn Forex, do you get 2 bites of the pie? Can you earn your Forex, bank your Forex, and still apply for all your Forex needs from the
No, you
Exim
can't.
Bank
No,
or from the local bank?
you can't. You can't. A certain percentage of the Forex is earmarked for small and medium enterprises. And if you're a net earner of foreign exchange, then you don't have access to the facility. And believe you me, we know who the net earners of foreign exchange are in the country, and they do not access the Exim Bank facility. 90% of it is there for small and medium-sized enterprises. There are medium enterprises that earn a certain percentage of Forex, but not enough to purchase their raw material needs. Those companies are urged to utilize the facility where you have to get the facility from Exim Bank. It's paid back with interest and all of that, but not the window that was created, right? So that is how that is managed with regards to how the Forex situation. This Forex situation has been going on for years. I remember more than 10 years ago, once you needed Forex, you had to go into this queue in the bank. The only difference between now and 10, 15 years ago is that when you go into the bank for a queue 15 years ago, and your time comes and you need 15,000 US or 20,000 US, you get the 20,000 US. Now, you go into a queue and they say we're getting a release next week. And you ask for 10,000 US or 20,000 US. And when next week comes around, they give you 2,000.
Correct. Even if you have a
invoice to
Forex
pay,
account.
you have an invoice to pay that says I need to send $20,000 to my supplier. So there's US circulating in the system, and I dare say there may be a disproportionate allocation of the US in the system. And I don't want to make the papers today by saying why I say that, but there are certain segments in the retail sector. If you look at it carefully, these segments are just importing items into Trinidad and Tobago.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Selling it in Trinidad and Tobago, and seem to be getting an inordinate supply of US dollars in a segment that has a glut in the market, right?
And that's a very astute observation, if I may say so.
Right? But the other thing that we have to understand too is that the global market has changed, and it has to do with e-commerce. Everything that's available in a mall in Trinidad and Tobago, you can buy it online. And there are some people who sit in their house with a credit card, right, and purchase online. Now, when you purchase online, that credit card has to be settled immediately to MasterCard or Visa or whatever it is. So a lot of the US, in fact, the last figure, I don't know if Roger might have the figure, but I think it's in the billion, it is a couple $1 billion were used to settle credit card payments for items. When you look at the items, we importing Dunkin' Donuts, we importing food items from abroad. Total non-essential items. And when I talk to new manufacturers, all I ask them to do is to look at the import data. If you want to start manufacturing, you're quite right, start with your home market. Look at the things we import. Look at the gaps in the market and start right there. Called import substitution, right? And you can build a business just by import substitution. I did it for myself. When I went into clothing manufacturing, people thought I was absolutely crazy because you could get all these products from China. And I started this business in 2020. And we manufacture shirts and polos and industrial workwear and all of that. And we manufacturing for Trinidad companies, large companies, and we're exporting these products throughout the Caribbean.
And I think that is excellent.
That people thought was dead.
Excellent.
People thought that segment was dead. It's not dead.
We need consumables like shoes and clothing, because when you look at places like large manufacturing centers, like let me say India and China, that's what they have been doing, right? They manufacture so much consumables for the local market that a lot of the people are able to buy locally rather than, buy imported stuff all the time. So I think that's an excellent thing. So Roger, you have any other questions?
No, the only thing I would say is that I listened attentively to what both guest speakers said, And I mentioned this before, and I raise it again with Roger Roach in one of his hats that he has on, that we need to know the dimensions of the e-tech park system. We need to know if it is a net foreign exchange earner, because the e-tech facility, as you mentioned, I think you mentioned it uses state land, so that therefore they charge a lower rent than the private sector equivalent. And if you are subsidized implicitly by the state, given the state of this economy, we want you to be a net foreign exchange earner. And I think that's something, Roger, that the management team at e-tech should look at. I mean, we have been calling for that about 3 or 4 years. No real steps in that direction. I hope someone like you, I see you speak, you know, with knowledge. I hope you could put that forward again to them, because it's in a situation like we are with the medium-term outlook in terms of gas. And I showed you all the IMF data. I think we need our e-tech parks to be distinctly and aggressively net foreign exchange earners.
I totally agree. And with regards to the study that you proposed to Ravish at the TTMA, the study did meet with our approval, and he's going to be getting back. He's going to get in touch with you to work out the details.
Thank you
in
very
terms
much.
of how it's implemented. I think, Vivek, your mic is off.
Are there any questions to any of our panelists? Any other questions? Well,
Vivek, it doesn't seem like we have any more questions from the floor. I'm just letting you know Vashti had to step away from her computer.
Okay. Well, seeing that there are no more questions, and we've actually gone a bit over time, it's now 10 to 9. I'd really like to thank both our presenters and Dr. Hussain for some excellent presentations tonight, and the follow-up discussions and conversations I thought were amazing, and they give some insight as to actual solutions that we can use in our country to perhaps enhance or develop policy that can actually be used in the economy. So once again, thank you very much, Roger Roach. Thank you very much, Ms. Vashti Gardine, and thank you very much, Dr. Roger Hussain, for the submissions tonight. And as always, thank you, Rebecca, for organizing and organizing once again an extremely insightful seminar this evening.
Good night,
So good night, everybody.
everyone.
Good evening.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.